Well, cities along the East Coast today continuing to pick up the pieces in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy. The historical storm has caused massive destruction to U.S. infrastructure. It's projected to cost tens of billions of dollars. Now, Homeland Security is using Sandy as proof that the U.S. needs to beef up cybersecurity protections. Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano said yesterday, quote, "If you think that a critical systems attack that takes down a utility even for a few hours is not serious, just look at what is happening now that Mother Nature has taken out those utilities." So is Superstorm Sandy indeed proof that the U.S. infrastructure is vulnerable to cyber attacks? To discuss this and more, RT web producer Andrew Blake joins us now. Hi there, Andrew.
Hey Liz, what's happening?
It's going well. Nice to have you on broadband rather than in the... Actually, I wish you were in the studio, but...
Well, I wish I was there too, being away from your smiling face. But
oh, thank you. Thank you. It's very nice of you. All right. So to start off, I want to ask you, Andrew, if it makes sense to compare the threat of a hurricane to the threat of cyber attacks.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so great that yesterday morning, actually, we were sitting around the RT America studios and we said, it almost looks like this would be exactly what one of these cyber attacks would do, what we've seen with Sandy. And we wrote something yesterday actually saying, yes, this is exactly what these cyber attacks could do. The same cyber attacks that we're waging on other countries easily could happen in the United States and create the kind of devastation that is kind of been considered unthinkable, but then Sandy came and moved in, and we've seen billions upon billions of dollars worth of damage up and down the East Coast. So it not only is it very possible that a cyber attack could create this kind of havoc, but at this point I would say it's even likely, given that the United States is all but certainly behind cyber attacks on other nations. So what we've seen the last few days, kind of like Secretary Napolitano said, is really just a taste of what we could expect if these cyber wars that we keep getting ourselves into turn back around and start hitting us.
So you don't think it's far-fetched for Napolitano to compare a natural disaster to a disaster in cyberspace?
Now, I would never go and say that the Department of Homeland Security is overly cautious, or dare I say that the DHS kind of every now and then likes to hyperbolize just a tad. I think it's pretty honest. I mean, keep in mind, this is the same agency who is giving out millions of dollars right now so that law enforcement agencies across the country can get surveillance drones. So the DHS, it seems almost cliche to say that the DHS are kind of the bad guys at this point, because they're doing things more than just Homeland Security. I mean, just the other day in San Francisco, they confiscated something like 1,100 counterfeit T-shirts that were being sold outside of the Giants Stadium. So, you don't want to say that they're just blowing this out of proportion, but they're really not. So let's not say that. Like, look at what one of these cyber attacks can do. Like, if you know what you're doing, you can wipe down every ATM in the country. You can wipe out every telecommunication provider. You can wipe out the electrical grid completely. You can wreak havoc on the entire country by polluting its water supply, shutting down its water supply, essentially rendering the entire infrastructure in place useless. That could be, in theory, done by a cyber attack. And let's look at what happened just over the last couple of days. I mean, in New York City, they're expecting, the last estimate I heard was $60 billion worth of damage in New York, just because no one can do anything. I mean, if you've been on Twitter, if you've been on Facebook the last couple of days and you know anyone in New York City, you've heard their seemingly endless complaints that, oh God, I can't get on the subway, what do I do now? Or, oh gosh, I don't have power, how am I going to communicate with the world? No, it's the same thing that you would expect these hackers to do, and it's very possible that it will and is going to happen. And like I said, go back and look at Stuxnet, look at Flame, look at these viruses that have been infecting Iranian computer systems, and America's almost certainly to blame for those, according to experts from around the world.
And certainly the scenario that you just described sounds very scary in this day and age. And of course, government officials are kind of ringing the warning bells on these cyber fears. And, you know, we had a congressman that compared this threat to Pearl Harbor. So a lot of extreme language being used to portray exactly how serious this threat is. Of course, Andrew, we do have an election coming up in just a few days. Do you think cybersecurity is proving to be a bipartisan issue? We know that it is on the top of the agenda for President Obama. What a President Romney, could we assume it would also be on the top of his agenda?
I mean, we can assume he's commented very, very sparingly as far as what he wants to do with cybersecurity. What he has said has pretty much been echoing the same sentiments that President Obama has already had. Just, oh, yes, we need to ramp up our cybersecurity. Uh-oh, what are we going to do when the bad guys come? But, I mean, it's going to happen regardless. Like you said, even it's not just politicians. The other day, the Defense Secretary Leon Panetta said that this is a pre-9/11 moment. So we're not even dealing with a pre-Pearl Harbor anymore. This is a big time apparently. So everyone is pushing for this. The Pentagon is pushing for cybersecurity legislation. The House and the Senate are pushing for cybersecurity legislation. The White House has drafted a cybersecurity executive order. President Obama has received it and is just waiting to sign his name. And you know, I believe we were talking just the other day about what's it going to take for President Obama to sign that executive order. What catastrophic incident is going to occur where the United States is going to have to go, okay, sorry, Congress, we're just going to have to sign this order in the White House, pass it, and we're going to put cybersecurity legislation on the books immediately. What will that take? And would it take a giant storm causing billions upon billions of dollars worth of damage across the entire country? That might be it. I mean, if I was the president and I was looking for an excuse to pass legislation that would pretty much strike down everyone's internet freedoms, I'd use the hurricane for that. But then again, I'm not the president, thank God. Yeah, I think that no matter what, we're going to see it happen sooner or later. I mean, the cybersecurity executive order has been sitting around the White House for something like 2 months now and hasn't been signed. And we know that obviously it's a lame duck session right now.
All right. I guess we're going to have to wait and see, but one thing is for sure, cybersecurity is a hot issue, and we can expect it to be at the top of the agenda there. Appreciate you coming on the show, Andrew. Pleasure as always. That was RT Web producer Andrew Blake.